Well, hello and welcome. It must be Thursday again. And some weeks it's hard to tell what day of the week it is, but it is Thursday, February 10th of 2022. That happened really quickly. My name is Guy Stevens. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. I am the founder and executive director of the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. A little bit about us. The Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint was really started around the issue of restraint and seclusion in schools. And what I will tell you is that continues to grow in terms of where our concerns are. It's not just about restraint and seclusion, it's restraint, seclusion, suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment, all the things that are happening to children, very often in the name of behavior, that are leading to very negative outcomes. We are firm believers that there are better things we can be doing to support kids. And that's part of why we do these live events, is we really want to highlight what are the better things we can do. How can we better support everyone? So I want to thank you for joining us. As the Alliance, our mission is really about changing hearts, minds, laws, policies, and practices so that, again, we can do better. Firm believer that when we can do better, we need to do better. And we absolutely have better things we can do to support people and see much better outcomes for students, teachers, and staff. Really excited today. As always, these presentations, I hope that all of you enjoy them as much as I do. It's really a great opportunity to meet amazing people that are doing really important work to make the world a better place for all of our kids and so many. So today, I'm really excited to have Olivia Hauge joining us. Olivia is a licensed occupational therapist and is going to be discussing how we can move beyond ABA and behaviorism to better approaches to supporting children. And of course, I recognize that people may have different experiences, when it comes to things. But here at the Alliance, we are very firmly against kind of the compliance-based approaches. We want approaches that are based in connection and compassion and, that value the lived experiences of people that have been part of them. So I think that this is going to be a really interesting presentation today. I do want to let you know that, as always, you're free to ask questions, and I would encourage you to. We'll have the opportunity at the end. So Olivia's going to present, and then following the presentation, we're going to have time for questions. Feel free to put them in the chat box anytime. I'm always kind of on the lookout, but we probably will hold off until the end, until we get to the questions. And as always, this is a question I get frequently. Today's event is, of course, being recorded. We record the events. They will be available on Facebook, YouTube, and also as an audio podcast. So you'll have lots of ways to connect with it and listen to it and hopefully learn something from it. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our special guest. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Olivia up here on the screen with me. And let me just read through a kind of a brief introduction. So Olivia is a licensed occupational therapist, as I mentioned, with over 20 years of experience supporting kids and their families in the private school sectors. She's also a licensed marriage and family therapist, supporting clients experiencing anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, sexual identity issues, life career transitions, and aging. Olivia is a mother of three, two with neurodifferences, and uniquely integrates her professional expertise and lived experiences with her clients. She is the co-division leader of the OT department at the Center for Connection in Pasadena, California. She's also the co-director of the Center for Connection and Neurodiversity. Olivia specializes in providing support to children, adults, and their family through neurodevelopmental, relational, sensory integrative, anti-behavioral, playful approaches. She, along with her colleagues, provide one-on-one therapy, parent consultations, paraprofessional training in services and assessments. Also is a regular speaker at professional conferences at universities and integrating occupational therapy, marriage and family therapy, and the parent perspective. So quite a list of credentials. You and I was trying to think, we had our first conversation. It was a great conversation many months ago. And I was thinking, did we connect through Mona? It seems to me that there was some connection there that we made or some, do you remember?
Yeah, asking me to remember what I did yesterday is a stretch, let alone what I did like a year ago. But I think we did connect quite a while ago. And I think it was
and I know that Mona's a big fan of your work. I'd actually shared your upcoming presentation with her and had very nice things to say about you. I appreciate it. The very first time we got to meet, though, just having the conversation, and it's always great to find people that you are aligned with and that are doing work that that you're passionate about and they're very passionate about. So we are very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It does feel like lonely work sometimes, and so it's for us professionals. It's good to connect to make sure that we're all still supporting each other.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that I've been feeling lately, and maybe it's maybe it's because I've not been doing this or kind of involved in the space for a long time, but I do see a growing movement of what kind of loosely we might call disruptors, people that are trying to bring better ways into systems that are very resistant to change. And again, I hope you don't mind me characterizing you as a disruptor, but but again, I think it's there's a lot of people out there doing some really amazing work to try to get better things in terms of the way that we're supporting children and youth and even adults.
For sure. Right.
So glad to have you as an ally here.
Yes,
so I'm going to go ahead and bring up your presentation here so that you can get started. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be taking questions at the end. So what I'm going to do here is in just a moment, I'm going to let you take the reins. I'm going to disappear. I will be off stage, but within a call. So if you need anything, just say my name and I'll appear. But we've got a good group that's already joined us, and I see people already introducing themselves. And I love when people, so if you're watching, tell us who you are and where you're from. But I already see that we have somebody from Australia, Columbus,
awesome.
Ohio, Toronto, Michigan, all over. And I see somebody being tagged here as well. So anyway, we've got a great group, and I'm really excited to have you here. So I'm going to let you take it over unless you have any questions for me, and then I will join you when you are through with the presentation to begin asking questions.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Guy. I appreciate this platform, and I appreciate all of the work that you're doing. I mean, you are, if I'm a disruptor, you're sort of like, leading, you're leading the charge. And so I appreciate everybody joining in. And so it seems like everybody's doing it already, but I definitely invite you to drop into the chat and just say, are you a parent, administrator? What is your role? Are you a therapist? Just so that we can see each other and see our community growing, and even, reaching out to one another after this chat to just continue to have the conversation and continue to build the community. So,
and I'll let you know, because I know you can't see, all the comments come in now, but we do have several people that have identified themselves as occupational therapists, a number of parents as well, some advocates. We have a autism waiver service coordinator in Maryland, and hello from Maryland. I'm here in Maryland as well. Some grandparents. So a lot of different people, educational I'm not speaking right here. So we've got a lot of people from different areas. So I'm going to disappear and let you take it over, but it looks like you've got a great audience here for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go to my next slide here, and don't adjust your screen. These little marks are my, I just decided to zhuzh up my presentation. No, these marks appear randomly on my PowerPoint, and I don't know it until I'm ready to present. So it just adds an extra little element of, intrigue when I'm presenting. But let's start with just a roadmap of what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm not going to bore you with the background, and we know about ABA, but I'm just going to give just a brief overview of what we're talking about, just so that we're all on the same page. And so we're just going to merge onto the ABA highway for a moment, and then we're going to launch into, okay, so we need to move beyond ABA. Well, now what, and who, and what do we do? And I believe the way to talk about this is, what are our roles? Because as a parent, you have a role; as a school district, you have a role; as a community, we all have a role. And so we're going to just break this down and hopefully have a really good conversation about it. I first wanted to start with I wanted to start with a thank you instead of ending with a thank you. But I wanted to start with a thank you to all of the disruptors, but all of the people that have started this revolution, or as Autism Level Up girls like to say, the Rebel Alliance, just starting this revolution of thinking a different way, of using science, and trying to shift the paradigm to not only a better way, but a way that respects human rights, and really puts things into perspective for us. So I just wanted to thank you, and giving us the opportunity to have these really hard conversations with each other. And so in an effort to not sound like a book report, to regurgitate, the great Mona Delahook's work, or Dr. Tina Bryson and Dan Siegel's work, I don't want to regurgitate those books to you, or that information. What I'm hoping to do is bring together my experience as Guy said, I've been an OT for over 20 years. And I actually worked in the public school sector, not in the private school sector. That might've been my little typo. And I've been recently licensed as a marriage and family therapist. But I think most importantly, I'm a mother of 3, and 2 of my children have neurodifferences. And it is my experience navigating all of these worlds with firsthand, challenges, and coming to my own understanding. That's where this presentation is sort of coming from. It's coming from that place. So let's jump into what we're talking about. ABA is applied behavioral analysis. Again, I'm just getting fancy with these little lines up at the top. And I want to be clear also that when I'm talking about ABA, I'm talking about the new and the old ABA. And I'm knee deep in social media and following pages and following parent groups. And then with my own experiences in the public school setting and working with parents, I hear the reframing that ABA is trying to do, and the rebranding, not reframing, rebranding of the new ABA. And so I want to just make it clear that I'm talking about any ABA. And so I also want to make it clear that I believe that professionals in that setting are really attempting, or really feel that they are doing what's best for their client. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to the audience about who I was talking about, or what we are talking about today. So I'm not going to go through the research. I'm not going to go through the resources. If you want the resources of the things that I'm talking about today, just reach out to me. I am happy to send those to you. But I don't want to get bogged down in those things. I want to really chew on now what are we going to do? But the research is out there. And, I just, in fact, while I was sort of waiting here, I jumped on my Facebook and I saw one of the posts of a individual that was doing a study. And I believe I saw that the study included 7,000 or near 8,000 respondents. And of the respondents, those with autism said, I think it was like 74% or 76% said absolutely no ABA. Do we support ABA for work work with a autistic child, and 74%, again, I just briefly looked at it, was against ABA, where where professionals or neurotypical respondents scored 43% with not wanting ABA. So there's this discrepancy. And so are we listening to the research? But more importantly, are we listening to the community, the exact community that we are attempting to support? So autistic advocates and autistic individuals are using social media as an amazing platform, telling their stories and saying, this is harmful to us. And so science has evolved, and so should we. So I wanted to give you a model of what my experience or my observations have been of what ABA sort of looks like, sort of the nuts and bolts of what goes on, so that we are still yet on the same page, and we're talking about how to move beyond this model. So the typical model that I saw nearly every day working in the school district was, and this is just an example, a child gets a task. Now, isn't handwriting hysterical? Like, I think this page is really funny, because a lot of the times writing is not a funny subject for our kids or our parents or teachers. And so what happens? So we give a demand, we place a demand on a child. We give them the worksheet. Maybe this is a worksheet they've seen a million times, and this time they throw their pencil. They chuck it across the room, whatever. And so what do we automatically start to think about? They chucked it because they want attention. They want to gain access to something that they don't have access to. They're trying to escape the situation, or there's a sensory component to it. Now, I want to make sure that I stress that when we say sensory here, this is not an in-depth understanding of sensory integration, sensory processing, sensory related to neuroception, sensory related to regulation. This is a more of a remedial understanding of sensory, which is, did this feel good, in other terms. And so what happens here is then there's goals, or then there's discussion about addressing this behavior. So-and-so will not throw or kick or try to escape the situation. The goal might be he or she will complete the work task with no behavioral outbursts, or my least favorite is moving a clip up or down, or earning stickers, etc. And so a lot of things are not right about this model, and there's a reason we have to move and push back on this model, and begin to look at placing the demand on the child and this whole equation differently. And so what has happened here, if we continue with this model, or what happens in this situation, is we've missed the opportunity to build, teach, or develop a skill. And my next slide will go into that in more detail. But we've also missed an opportunity to see the student. So the student's asking for help. The student is in distress. The student is dysregulated. The student is having, some issue with this particular activity. Are we listening to this student? So we miss the opportunity to really connect with that student. And we favor extrinsic motivation. So, what typically happens is there's a a transactional, give and take. You do this, you get a sticker, or you will earn a certain amount of tokens to earn your an item that you love, like your iPad, or food in some cases, and then participating in this model continues to perpetuate this idea that we can minimize a human down to 4 or maybe 5 functions of behavior. And I'm not sure about you, but I don't want to be minimized to 4 functions of behavior. And so why do we continue to allow this to happen, and happen quite freely and without us questioning, like, well, why did he throw the pencil? It's not escape, but why is he escaping? So the model that, and this is just an example of sort of a situation that I would walk into, right? So as the OT, I would come into the classroom, the hysterical writing assignment, totally hysterical work, writing. Anyway, I just think this page is funny. Anyway, never mind. Having my own little moment here. So we give the child this task or this demand, and the child throws their pencil. So what I immediately do is I start to ask all these questions. Does the child feel safe in the classroom? What are their fine motor skills like? What are their visual motor skills like? What is their sensory processing like for this activity? And this is just a few of the things that I'm just quickly, looking at: tactile, auditory, visual. Is there trauma or chronic stress going on? Is there fatigue? Is there an interoception situation going? Are they hungry? Do they need to go to the bathroom? Is there dysgraphia happening here? Is there praxis? Are their reflexes fully integrated? These are just a few. I can keep going on. These are just a few of the questions that I'm asking, and few of the reasons why the pencil might have gotten thrown. Another big one that I didn't put in here is communication. Does this child have access to a communication tool right here that he or she or they are able to access immediately, to be able to tell their communication partner, I'm under stress, I need help? And so, or their energy doesn't meet the demand. So then what do I start to do is I look at this not as a behavior, not as oh, Johnny threw his pencil again, but okay, he got dysregulated. Why is he doing that? So then my job is to find out what skill is Johnny needing some extra support in. So Johnny will build and then fill in the blank, the skill. And I like to write goals that are a little bit more for the adult than for the child, because I really feel like this is the child's doing enough work. The adults are the ones that need to come in, be that anchor for that child, and help that child co-regulate in these situations, and really be that curious observer and detective and partner or teammate. Like, how can you and I solve this problem together? So we'll collaborate on developing a roadmap for the activity. Well, maybe that kid wasn't regulated to begin with when that hysterical paper hit the table. Maybe we needed to level up the energy before the paper was placed on the desk. Maybe it isn't a pencil, but maybe it's a pen, or maybe it's a computer. And so we collaborate on developing a roadmap for that activity. And we address the sensory needs and we'll make accommodations and modifications. Nowhere here am I saying that that child needs to change, but rather we are coming together as a partnership to try to help. And I'm not reducing a human to just four functions of behavior. So what did we do here if we adopt this kind of a model is when the child's thinking, when I need help, someone shows up for me, someone's there, and I'm going to be more likely to reach out the next time. But if you have a child that's constantly has their hand up saying, I need help, and no one reaches out to help them, then, is that child likely to keep their hand up in the air? We identified and addressed the skill that needs building. We've identified this and we're working on it. We favor intrinsic motivation as opposed to extrinsic motivation. And we listened. The most important thing, I think, is we've listened and we have valued the human experience. So all of these lovely people have done such great work. They're pioneers in their field, and I thank them, and I use their work and I use their words every day when I'm doing parent consultation and I'm working with parents who are fatigued and exhausted and tired of fighting and tired of being the ones to provide the research and provide the the advocacy, as opposed to it, just being able to team up and develop a program that works for their children. And so as a community, we not only need to do this, right, which is shifting the paradigm and reframing behaviors and connection over compliance. I love all of this stuff. What we need to do as well, and where I think that a lot of work still needs to be done, is our understanding of our own biases towards disability. And we need to get there so that we can say yes to the paradigm shift. And so understanding for ourselves the ideology of our own perceptions and knowledge and understanding of disability, because the roots of ableism are widespread in a program like ABA. And so in order to move past it, we need to understand that we're needing our own sort of growth, and me as well. I'm learning every single day, but I'm learning from the community that I am trying to support. So understanding the ideology. So, for myself, I grew up with a mother who was deaf and had her own perceptions of disability based on her own lived experiences. And so the messages for me were, one of fear and that disability was something to really be fearful of and to push away from. And so that for me was a coming to an understanding about how I saw my own children, and then how I also treated others in my clinical experience. And then asking questions like, are we presuming competence? Are we appreciating the not only the human experience, but their thoughts, their feelings, their pain, their joy, and are we actually listening? I've been in many IEP meetings where the topic of conversation was, this behavior, this particular behavior. And it took the simple question of like, have we taken him to a doctor? Do we know that he's not experiencing significant headaches or tooth pain or some sort of internal something happening to the reason these behaviors are happening? And so I think that we sometimes, or not sometimes, we a lot of the times do not presume competence, that we're making assumptions for the individual. And the other thing is disability does not equal therapy. And I know that a lot of the times I receive inquiries from parents who are really stressed out and really wanting a lot of therapy, and particularly ABA is 20 to 30 hours a week of intense support. And I'm not certain where that came from. Well, no, I do know where it came from, but because someone is autistic does not equal hours and hours and hours of therapy. Let's figure out where that person needs to be supported and give them the right support. More and more and hours doesn't equal, better outcomes. And late last night, I was scrolling through some things and I found an article, and I pulled this out because it really stopped me in my tracks, and I really loved it. So it says, we must recognize, understand, take responsibility for, and reduce the unacceptable biases that have led to autistics being considered unharmable, such that anything can be done to them. Wow. I mean, last night I was near tears when I read that, because I'm just thinking of the children that I have treated in the past, who have experienced, hours and hours of therapy attempting to make them something that they are not, and the harm that it must have done to them. So the other thing as a community that I think hopefully we can all get behind is erasing or sort of striking through the word behaviors, and let's start saying dysregulation. In fact, I even struggle if I'm talking about something and I say, oh, this behavior, I kind of catch myself, because to me now, the word behavior has such a connotation to it, such gravity and grossness to it, that I want the people, the parents that I'm talking to, and the people, the administrators that I talk to, or the professionals I talk to, that we are on the same page. We're talking about dysregulation, and we're talking about the nervous system. And so I think when we start to reframe it and start to say dysregulation instead of behaviors, that immediately shifts us into a conversation where we're asking the why questions and moving beyond 4 functions of behavior. So what can we all do? Let's break this down. So we talked about community. Let's talk about schools a bit. And I think first and foremost is talk about disability. I believe it's in the United States that the disabled population is the largest minority group. And so why aren't we talking about this in schools? We should all know who Judy Human is. And it should be, I feel it should be part of the curriculum, and from young ages, talking about disability and differences and normalizing differences. and really infusing that into what our kids are learning. Also, inclusion and accessibility. I know these are words that are thrown around in school districts, and are I know that our schools make attempts to do these things. I'm also talking about sensory safe classrooms, trauma informed classrooms, but also making areas of the school accessible to our to everyone, so that children on campuses are not just feeling tolerated, but accepted. And trainings in neurodiversity. So I spent 20 plus years in public schools, and I have sat through my share of sexual harassment and my share of don't shop on Amazon on your computer, technology training, whatever. And so I think that schools need to really dig into training their school staff. And I mean every school, everybody on that campus on neurodiversity. And then there are other models. So I remember when I started as an OT, my first experience actually was walking into a preschool and kindergarten classroom, an ABA preschool and kindergarten classrooms, where I was handed the little apron with the all of the goldfish and the gummies and all of this stuff, and that's how I was originally trained as an OT. That was sort of this. I walked into this classroom. That was my experience. And so, but over the years, there weren't BCBAs on staff, and there weren't, ABA trained paraprofessionals or RBTs. That was something that needed to be fought for through due process and that sort of thing. But over the years, I have seen it just take hold in school districts and sort of kind of like The Blob. You remember that old movie? Just like a slow moving wave of ABA-ness. Anyway, so I can see how schools or administrators or parents, their title is behavioral specialist. Of course, we're going to call you in when this child has behaviors. But now that we have this information, we have the research, we have the resources, we have a community of individuals saying, please stop. At this point, we are now choosing to continue to adopt that model. So what I'm saying here, schools, administrators, people in decision-making roles, you are choosing to continue to adopt this model. There are other models out there, and I've just put two there, but the information and the ball is sort of in your court to really start to look at changing that and providing a different model and different, something better, doing something better. And then utilizing your free resources. Talking bottom lines with schools is how I felt. I see the way to your heart is talking about money and what's cost efficient. And I'll tell you from my experience, I sat there as an OT going, hello, hi, I know what's going on here. I know why these behaviors are happening. I see all that whole list, that fine motor, visual motor, all of that stuff. Hi, I'm here. I can help this. And so what I mean by utilizing your free resources is, number one, if you have an OT on staff, you got a behavioral specialist. And also, co-regulating, empathizing, listening, and, digging down to the why is free. That doesn't take the stickers and the gummies and all of that stuff. You have those resources. You have empathetic individuals on your campus. And so just tapping into those resources, learning more, getting the training, and really searching out there for better ways than ABA. Okay, OTs, I'm looking straight at you, sister. I love our profession. Love it. I didn't always. I got burnt out somewhere in the middle there, but I rediscovered it because I went back to the roots. And nothing is more back in the roots than moving away from behaviorism and rediscovering what we already knew. And so since this isn't an OT, webinar, I'm just going to give you guys 3 simple things. Number 1, wave your flag. You have the unique education and background to help support that child and that IEP team. We know about sensory, we know about fine motor, we know about gross motor, we know about visual motor, we know about mental health, we know about regulation, we know about sensory processing. Wave your flag and get your voice out there. Stop outsourcing our jobs. And I was one of them. I was someone that said, "Oh, it's not sensory, this is behavior." I said that often. And that's before I knew better. And so what I have experienced myself not too long ago is sitting in an IEP meeting and listening to the goals in an IEP team, listening to everybody go around and having the ABA write a goal about fine motor skills or about bilateral coordination or something. And so waving my flag and, really stepping up and saying, that's out of your scope of practice. I'm not certain what you're doing there. But also, we can't continue to outsource our jobs to professionals that when we can do that job ourselves and better. And again, tap into your roots. What did we learn day 1 of OT school? What we learned was meaningful activities. Use the individual's meaningful activities to support that individual. Stimming is a meaningful activity. Lining something up is a meaningful activity. We have to tap back into our roots and really empower ourselves to jump in there and use our voices and for God's sakes, use our expertise to help in these situations. Join IEP teams, do in-services, recommend consultation so that you can consult with teachers and staff so that you can impart your information and your knowledge. Okay, parents. So if you're just joining me, I want to make sure that those who are joining me, parents in particular, that you know that I'm coming from a place of my own experience as well. And so I am on this journey of self-awareness and gathering information along with you. And so the first thing I want to encourage you to do to move beyond behaviorism, because what I always hear is, okay, so yeah, I need to get rid of my ABA, but who's going to see my kid for 40 hours a week? Or who's going to do this? Or who's going to be my child's one-on-one? Or I said, I went to the meeting and I said, no ABA, and everybody just stared at me and said, yes, ABA. And then I had to sign the paper. So what I want you to hear is that to feel empowered and to find a community of like-minded parents or like-minded people. And hopefully we have this community here that's growing, and don't fear reaching out to people and saying, can you be part of my community? Because it is a very lonely and isolating feeling. And so knowing that someone is there and experiencing the same thing is so helpful, even for myself. Even, when I'm advocating for my children, I too am like, ugh, am I, because it's those IEP teams, those are perfect storms. It's you and all of these people who hold this knowledge. And so you get intimidated. So just know that you have a community of people behind you, and just say no. That's as simple as I can be. Logistically, FBAs, functional behavioral assessments, don't need to be performed by BCBAs or ABAs. So OTs jump in there. And, FBAs are worded really difficult. So I know that the language and putting things in there and what's the function of behavior here, adapt it and make it work, individualize that for that child. That's what the IEP is for, is to provide individualized support for that child. Instead of an RBT or a paraprofessional that is trained in ABA techniques or strategies or whatever, ask for a therapeutic companion, someone that has that developmental knowledge, that is going to approach your child with the empathy, with the listening, and asking those questions. They may not know everything about visual motor skills or bilateral coordination, but at the very least, they know to ask why, and they know that their job is to say, okay, what's happening here? Did I set up the environment, right? And am I working with this child's unique needs in order to make this activity as successful as possible? Other options to ABA therapy. So, parents are like, okay, well, what other therapy can I do? Floor time, DIR floor time, and OT. And if your OT is not listening to you, or also uses some of the behavioral strategies and techniques, and it just doesn't feel right, find another OT. Find another professional. And parents, keep a quiet eye on fear. For me personally, a lot of decisions that I made for my first child was based on fear. And I remember having her, and I mean, this was still like in the hospital, and, I'm already flashing forward 20, 30 years down the road, and, oh my goodness, and my life is over, and, all of these things, and really fearing for her future, and fearing, and making a lot of decisions based on fear. And I would say that some of that fear came from other professionals or doctors telling me, if you don't do this now, she will do blah blah blah, or she won't do whatever. And so I learned, not long ago, that I needed to keep a quiet eye on fear. And so when I would be making decisions, or if I was, or even just supporting her in a way, I was always asking myself, am I doing this out of fear? Does this have to do with, society's view about her, society's view on what's normal, what's typical? Am I making this decision because it makes someone else comfortable? And so what my husband, I think he got there much sooner than I did, but where I got to in a place in my life, with my firstborn, was, she is living her best life. She is joyful and happy and loving life. And I was getting in the way of that. And so what I needed to do was recognize, I am neurotypical and she is not. And so I had to put aside what I thought was important and what I thought was necessary as a neurotypical person, and begin raising a neurodifferent child. And that is her identity, and allowing her to have her identity and not trying to change that. And again, this was self-actualization or realization, or however you want to say it, but it's been an amazing process of listening to others and coming to a really great understanding where I, once I did that, once I let go of that, like my stress and my anxiety also kind of fell by the wayside. So another thing to move beyond ABA, move beyond behaviorism, is language. So helping other professionals refer to behaviors as dysregulation. Oh, you mean dysregulation, right? Nervous system, talking about the nervous system just helps everybody put everything in context. And on a daily basis, I get emails from parents who are sending me notes. I laugh, but it's not funny. But sending me notes from like their teachers or their paraprofessionals or whoever. And it's these long lists of, your child threw his shoe, and then after he threw his shoe, he slapped me on the bottom, and then after he slapped me on the bottom, he did this, and then he knocked over his water. And it's this long laundry list of behaviors. And what I find myself doing is like scrolling down and scrolling down and scrolling down, like pages of, then he did this, then he did that, and I'm trying to scroll all the way down to where was the, like, and then we connected with him, and then we co-regulated with him, and then we realized it was because, he was hungry or whatever. And so helping the teachers and everyone understand what dysregulation is, and that it's, the nervous system, instead of those 4 functions of behaviors. So what I encourage parents to do, and I also am, it's a work in progress. It's definitely practice. I try to take good and bad out of my vernacular and instead say, who did you connect with today? Who co-regulated with you? How were you supported today? I love my son's aide. I'll give her a little shout out. This was months ago. I was picking him up and she said, we just didn't find a connection today, but we'll connect tomorrow. Oh my gosh, right? Like that was telling me he had a good or bad day is, the idea that she was able to say like, we just really couldn't connect today, but we'll connect tomorrow. That was everything to me. And also non-speaking doesn't mean non-communicating. And I can't stress this enough that a lot of parents ask me like, how do I connect with my child? Well, I think that a lot of the times, or most of the time, our children are already connecting with us. We just need to like or like watch what they're doing because they're connecting the way that they can connect. And so what does it mean to move beyond behaviorism? I think first and foremost, it means recognizing our own biases, our own understanding about disability, and recognizing the identity and the nervous system and the human standing in front of us who is communicating with us in the way that their nervous system is allowing them to, or in the way that they can when they don't have something readily available. So this is a huge conversation, and I hope that at least that behind the scenes, because I can't see anybody, by the way, like I can't see Guy, I can't see anybody, that at least behind the scenes you guys are connecting, and that today's conversation just gave you something to like, just that one little piece or that nugget to at least get through today, right? And I invite you to reach out to us at the Center for Connection, or what I would love is to build a community of people who are like, yes, we are here. We are here to support each other, and just make sure that we aren't feeling isolated or alone, but that we're all supported and connected.
Fantastic. Olivia, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and give you people a moment to just write down your information here from your final slide, and then we'll take that down. And then in just a moment, you'll be able to see me and know that there are still people here and we are still connected. That was really fantastic. And I think we're going to get a lot of comments and hopefully some questions. So I would encourage people while you're thinking about it, if you have questions about the presentation or comments, feel free to put those in the chat and we will get to those. But Olivia, I wanted to start out with one. And again, I wanted to thank you for this, what you couldn't see because you could only see your own screen was me behind the scenes.
Kind of so going, bizarre.
Yeah, amen. My head was shaking a lot, in affirmation of what you were saying. So, so much good there. I did want to ask you before we got into some general questions about your presentation. Can you tell us more about the Center for Connection? So, of course, we mentioned that in your bio and you're mentioning it here, but what is the Center for Connection? What kind of work gets done there? Tell us a little bit more about that, if you would.
Oh, geez. Do you have an hour? So the Center for Connection.
We'll take the shorter version.
Yeah. The Center for Connection is this amazing, Mecca in Pasadena. And our director is Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. And she started this nugget of multidisciplinary what she wanted to do was create a place that parents could go to that could get the multidisciplinary professionals. So we have speech therapists, we have OTs, we have marriage and family therapists, we have social workers, we have educational therapists, we have neuro psychs. You guys, am I missing anything? I don't want to miss anybody. Yeah, so we're all there, and I am the co-director of the OT department, and then my work wife and I also, as part of the Center for Connection, opened up the Center for Connection and Neurodiversity, where we're doing, trying to develop a wraparound program so that we can help families and their children and try to support them in every direction that we can.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So a couple comments, couple questions here. And again, I want to encourage people, if you have comments or questions, to put those in the chat. Somebody asked about, let's see, just a quick one for us. How can you let us know how we can access your talk? And of course, we will have this available on the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraints Facebook and YouTube page, so you can access it there. And I think some people are looking for your website as well, and I'll try to put that in the chat here in a second. Some nice comments here. This is wonderful. Thank you for this information. Another nice thank you here. Let's see. Somebody here said adults experiencing dysregulation in complex social settings also need our continued enlightened attention. A couple of very just affirmative things here. Yes, people talking about their own school situations. Angie said that the FBAs done by my son's school psych were a joke and just a way to keep track of all the behaviors.
Yeah.
The BCBA actually helped write a plan to meet his needs and help him learn not to mug other kids when he was excited to see them. Let's see, somebody mentioned self-reg as another great resource. Dr. Shanker's work. So definitely want to highlight that. And I appreciate Nancy Marshall was adding links to the chat for us here for Mona and others.
Yay.
Yeah. All right. So question here. Let's see. Why do you think schools continue to use FBA/BIPs in 20 years in special education? I've never seen one that works.
Right. I think it's a multi-layered thing, right? It's one because who else are you going to call except for behavioral specialists, right? So call them in. Also, there isn't another thing readily available. If you ask for something else, chances are they don't know. They're not familiar with what you're talking about. They have to do their own research. I think there's multi-layers. And so that's why I encourage parents, to sit in that uncomfortable space at those IEPs. I know it's uncomfortable, but just say no. I don't want ABA. ABA may not be on my IEP at all. And so, come at me with something different. And so, there are other options instead of that.
Yeah. And of course we see these things, FBAs and BIPs are actually codified into law, so that, when children are having a difficult time, this is one of the steps. Now, I've got a couple of concerns. I mean, one is the tendency to always begin these conversations with trying to determine what's wrong with the child.
Correct.
Rather than what they need or what support is necessary or what in the environment is making it difficult for them. I love the list that you had of all the questions. I love the idea. And I've heard you and Greg Santucci and others that keep talking about the why, following the why. So critical. And again, we get to this functions of behavior, and it's not about following the why. In fact, I've had behaviorists tell me, I don't care why they're doing what they're doing. I only want to change it. that's not helpful. And again, that gets to these models of reward and consequence, and what do we find? Well, reward and consequence, as Alfie Cohen would say, are good at one thing, and that's
Right.
short-term compliance. It's not about helping kids develop skills. It's not about helping people to be able to be more adaptive in certain situations. It's about just extrinsic motivators, and that doesn't work.
Well, and I was in a meeting with a heated meeting with a BCBA, and we were sitting around the table, and I was, just asking these questions, and I remember her getting very frustrated at me and saying, "What does the brain have to do with all of this?" Like, what? All of it. The brain has everything to do with it. And so that was a really scary situation for me, because I'm saying, wait a minute, you're entering these situations with these little kids or big kids, and you're not considering the brain at all. That's worrisome. And it's worrisome that our young children are being provided up to 40 hours or 30 hours of services. And typically that is being done at the hands of someone that does not have training in basic development, basic neuroscience understanding, very little information. And so that is worrisome to me. And then who do we prescribe that many hours to anybody? I don't want to be prescribed that.
Don't you think, though, too? I mean, so when I began the Alliance, and it's only been what, about 3.5 years ago. We never did ABA with my son. It was at one point recommended, and I'd like to tell you that we chose not to do it because I knew better. But the truth is that we didn't do it because they backtracked and said, well, your son's a little too old. That's probably not the best approach. But of course, we know a lot of parents out there are being sold this as kind of the gold standard.
Yeah.
And the thing that I come back to is this idea of, your purpose has a lot of meaning. And, having had the amazing privilege to hear and have shared with me lived experiences from many amazing autistic self-advocates, sharing their journeys and understanding the impact that ABA has had on them and their lives, really caused me to kind of see things in a very different light. Of course, I've always had this idea of, well, I wouldn't say always, as you said, it was when we know better, we do better. And I can think back to my own parenting and think, gee, I could have done better there. But
Right.
I learned, and but I think back to all of that, and the goal of when you have something like ABA, it's seen as a treatment, and it's a way to make someone that's autistic seem less autistic. I mean, that in and of itself is not an appropriate goal. I mean, seeing the kinds of goals and demands that are part of it, I mean, we should be looking at how can we remove barriers, how can we support people, so I would say, even, and I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts, but even the goals of some of these programs, whether it be ABA or something else, that should be very telling from the start.
I mean, 100%. And I over the past few years have been trying to figure out, how do we write the goals for the adults and not the kids in the IEP, so I will sneak it in there when, something like, when his assistant is co-regulating with him, he will blah, 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 or with the assistance of his, co-regulator or a communication partner, he will blah, 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 like hint, hint. That needs to happen first. The adult needs to happen first. And that needs to be the regulating factor. And that those two nervous systems need to be, aligned. And so, or at the very least, that adult is that anchor, that nervous system anchored to help that child who's sort of flopping around in the wind. And so, Yes, I 100%. If you're the parent and you're hearing goals that are not rooted in the skill, like what, not that Jeremy will not throw the pencil,
Right,
but
right,
like what about that activity is
right,
the
right,
trigger?
right,
If it's fine motor, then we need to write a fine motor
right,
goal.
right,
If
right.
it's visual motor, we need to write a visual motor goal.
Mhm.
Um, but ABA or BCBAs simply do not have the schooling to be able to discern all of those things. And so, that's
Mhm,
those
mhm.
those yeah.
Let me transition to us for a second.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of thinking about the scope of this, and as you mentioned, you kind of alluded to the fact that you've got OTs in your school. Reach out to those people, and I want to share with you some thoughts and concerns and see what you
Yeah.
think. And that
Oh,
is,
I'm sure my OT colleagues are like, Olivia, what are you doing?
well. So one of them, it may
Yeah.
be in that vein, and that's, while we find that schools might be hiring more and more RBTs and BCBAs, there are often very few, or maybe one OT. In my personal experience, which isn't anything but a single point of data, but when OTs were involved in our process, they typically had a very limited role, and I hate to say this, but seem to kind of be forced into a lane, and might talk about assistive technology or how to grip a pencil, but weren't really getting into problem solving. How do we make that shift? And I know there are, and because I've had plenty of conversations, a lot of OTs out there like you, like Greg Santucci, like other people that I've talked to, that see the much broader role and impact that OTs can have. But how do we change that? I mean, I guess maybe it's a matter of the organization behind ABA and their ability to suddenly get the number of staff everywhere increasing. But how do we really raise more awareness about an OT's role, not have them on the back burner, and get them more involved in these situations where kids really need help?
Oh, I mean, we had this experience where we were beginning to get sort of shoved off to the side and in so many words say, you treat in a vacuum, you treat in your little therapy room, your kid comes in, you treat them, and then they go back out, and and we've got the rest, like RBTs or ABA, we have the rest. And the so I have a loud mouth and I can't keep myself quiet. And so in those IEPs, I'm saying, hold on a moment. That's my goal. What that's not that goal. You can't write that goal. Or that's within my scope of practice. I'm not certain why you're so OTs waving your flag, and you don't need to be as loud as I am, or maybe obnoxious as I am, but like just saying, hey, school administrator, let me make sure you know what my expertise is, because I guarantee you, if you were to walk into an administrator, I love our administrators and they don't need to know everything, but I guarantee you, if you walked into some of these administrators' offices and asked them, what is OT? What is it that I do? They can give you maybe the legal job description, but understanding the breadth of knowledge that we have in the sciences, that might come as a surprise. And so first and foremost, I think just educating them to let them know what your expertise is in, because I get it. They see me playing with a kid, like what expertise do you need for that? And so educating them educating the parents, using those IEP moments to educate the team and explain that regulation is the foundation. And so maybe that escape behavior is happening because of this sensory experience or sensory overload or whatever. So using those opportunities to engage in those meaningful conversations. And then, for OTs, getting involved in the initiative to, I'm losing the term, to, to not license us, but you know what I'm talking about, in order to be in administration in school districts. So get involved in that so that we can take leadership roles, so that we can start making some of these major decisions.
Okay. I had a follow-up to that I lost, but there's a question here, and actually a question that also elicited another comment. But let's talk for a second about kind of the pushback that you get. So Nancy said, what's your rebuttal to BCBA's doctors, administrators who say, well, the pushback for ABA is from people who can talk. The people who don't speak can't tell us that we were actually helpful. I find this horrifying. Talk about dysregulation. And somebody else, commented back on this as well and said, this claim implies that the only valid method of communication is talking, which is definitely not true. So how do you handle, some of that pushback? We certainly hear it. And we have organizations out there that represent well, I think I ought to put this the best way I can. There are organizations out there that are actively pushing back against the autistic self-advocacy communities, saying, well, you don't understand our situation. I tend to come from the school of thought that the things that we do and the things that you're talking about here in terms of self-regulation, in terms of working with people with compassion and connection, are important to anyone that we're working with. So how do you handle that pushback?
So, originally it would rile me up. Like I'd get all hot and, sweaty, and my cheeks would flush, and I would just like, where's my research? Like, where is it all? And where's the documentation and whatever? And now my pushback is, the resources and the research is out there. You just need to go look. We're talking about a bias towards a minority group, and the just simply saying that because they're non-speaking, then that whole group is thinking a certain way, is in itself,
absurd.
It sort of like begs the it's circular. So I don't want to say that I don't engage in those conversations anymore. I simply say it is a human right to listen and to value the lived experiences of these individuals. And my job, I have a job because I want to support them. So I have to listen to how they best want to be supported. And so, one of the things people have heard me say this in the past, like Judy Heumann and all of those people stood, crawled, wheeled, clawed their way up those stairs in Washington. We cannot, 40 years ago, we cannot thank them. We cannot stand on their backs and say, thanks for doing that. But at the same time going, I want you to be a little bit more typical. Can you do that for me? I'd like for you to be a little bit more speaking, or I want you to communicate to me in this way. We can't do that. We have to thank them and listen to them.
Absolutely. So a couple more things to get to here. Let's see. Julie mentioned that after 4 years of bad experiences in school, 2 different behavioral treatment programs, and now made the decision, I think, to unschool or homeschool. and that they have a 11-year-old autistic son. He's been through so much stress and trauma. So I have, let's see, truth be told, not quite sure where to go from here. So, and we find this a lot. And, the families that we work with here at the Alliance, many have children that have been restrained, secluded, suspended, expelled, all these things. And of course, what we know is one, kids that are more often, having these things done to them are most often children with disabilities. Up to 80% of restraints are kids with disabilities. We know that many of the kids that are having these things happen to them, be done to them, are kids that have a trauma history. We know how trauma affects the brain and the changes that happen in the brain. We know that when anyone is traumatized, they might become hypervigilant. And what do we see? We see these negative things that are happening to kids that then lead to more negative things. And from there, getting back to Julie's point, we took my son out of school for 2 years and we homeschooled him. And that was in response to feeling that we didn't have faith in the school's ability to meet his needs.
Right.
And of course, we think about the importance of safety. If a child doesn't feel safe, a child's not ready to be in school. So what's your recommendation for maybe people that have been through some of these things and how they can get on a road to helping and supporting positive growth and changes?
Yeah. And you brought up something that I wanted to make sure, and I didn't include it in the parent slide, but I want to make sure that parents hear this, is that have it in your IEP that you will be notified if your child is held or therapeutic holding or whatever term they use. Because I know that, we're talking about restraint and seclusion and you're like, well, my child's not going to a padded room or whatever, but this happens a lot. And children are escalated into complete dysregulation and therapeutically held. And, they're saying, no, let me up. Please stop touching me. Kids who are typically non-speaking, who are in this fight or flight, using all of these words. So, the nervous system is really engaged here. So make sure that you're being told of each time your child is experiencing some sort of therapeutic holding or whatever, if there's a BCBA or ABA or RBT or paraprofessional involved. And then Julie, I want to tell you that you are not alone. We have many parents that reach out to us that are like, my child is no longer safe in school. We cannot send them back into school. We have no other options. And it is a frightening decision to make. And so I want to encourage you by saying that by putting his mental health and his physical safety and his own nervous system first, you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But also, we call it at the Center for Connection, we call it the Rainbow and Unicorn School. So when we get this phone call from parents, we start to call around and talk to our colleagues, like, anybody heard of a Rainbow and Unicorn School that's out there that we can send so and so to? And so it's hard to, and I wish I had the answer. I wish I knew that there was a Rainbow and Unicorn School that we said, send them there. Yeah. But at least just knowing and feeling comfortable with your decision, I think is where you can sit today.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've found is that, if this happened in the public school, of course, there are often non-public or private schools that might be options for people to look into, might be potentially even paid for through the district. Mm-hmm. One of the concerns there is that some of these placements are far worse than what they might have faced
Right.
in a public setting.
Right.
And I say some because, when what happened to my son happened to him, we had him in a home and hospital program for the remainder of the 8th grade school year. We eventually looked for a non-public school and advocated for that. But we actually had a hard time finding non-public schools that weren't doing things like restrained seclusion, that
Right.
weren't doing things like, really compliance-based approaches. And we eventually found a program, and my son's going on 3 years there and has done really well. But it's a trauma-informed program. It's very highly individualized. They call it a community program. So a lot of his education is not even happening in a typical classroom. But it's hard. And if you have a child that's been through something like restraint or seclusion, schools that don't use those measures might say, well, gee, that's a behavioral issue and we can't take your child in our school. So there becomes no good place for a child sometimes that's been traumatized in a school. And of course, families, we homeschooled for 2 years. We made a hard decision. We had to make some sacrifices. We were able to do it, but not everybody's in a position to be able to do that. If you're a single parent or you're working multiple jobs,
Sure.
and of course, our kids are I'd like to say guaranteed, but they are deserving of a free and appropriate public education. And it's really frustrating how hard people have to fight for things that are traumatizing and damaging to their children. So, like you said, I agree. Anything you can do to have your child supported in a loving environment. I think about always the work of Dr. Bruce Perry and kind of the importance of connection and just the difference that one loving, supportive adult can make.
Right.
And that can certainly be a parent and caregiver after a situation like this. Well, we are running out of time, but I want to see if we have a couple more things here that we can hit. I did get a comment here from Tori who said, our school-based OTs have limited experience with sensory and co-regulation. I've met OTs with kind of very different backgrounds. Certainly, I've met a number that seem to have a lot of background in the brain science. I don't know what's part of a curriculum, and I don't know if that's even shifting or changing over time. But certainly, those seem like really important areas for people to have experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. I certainly hope that schools, I haven't been in school or OT school for a very long time. But the stuff that I learned about sensory integration, sensory processing was definitely outside of school through continuing education, and through and being OT certainly under the umbrella in our scope of practice that we do have mental health, but as I went through school for marriage and family therapy, and then joining the Center for Connection and the work there, I certainly got much more of a vast knowledge of the neuroscience and sensory integration, and then going, oh, okay, now I'm seeing where the connections are, and so it's certainly within the scope of OT practice, and so I certainly hope that more and more continuing education focuses on that. I would love for schools to begin to, even if there's electives, to integrate electives that are with this. But first and foremost, I don't know if there's any schools listening, but to help OTs advocate for their own job. I think that's one of the most where OTs are really good at apologizing. Like, hi, sorry, we're the OT. Can we have a little closet in the background to treat our kids? That's what we're really great at.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, listen, we have gone to our time limit here, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap things up here. But before I do, I wanted to give you an opportunity if there's any last things you want to share or any kind of real take-home message you want members of the the viewers here to think about. Give you an opportunity to share any final thoughts.
Oh, thanks. No, I just wanted to thank you and and that to encourage people to reach out to us on our socials, drop us a DM, I guess is what the kids say, because we really are interested in building a community of people who support each other and say, you know, this worked for me when we did this at the IEP meeting, or just simply knowing that we are not alone. Because even for myself, I reach out to, you know, I think I emailed Beth Tolley a few months back, and I just said, thank you for things that you do. And she said, that's really nice, because sometimes I feel lonely. And so I, you know, it's just nice to hear from others. So definitely
Absolutely.
reach out to us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today, and I hope that this is maybe the first of several conversations. There's certainly a lot to talk about here, and you know, want to encourage people to continue, you know, looking at, you know, again, it's that question of how can we do better, and you know, I think that you know, your presentation today really hopefully will get people thinking about how can we look at things better, how can we better work with and support people. So thank you so much. I've got a couple announcements I'm going to share with folks, but
yeah,
I will let you go, and
thanks.
hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Hi everybody.
Bye bye. So a couple of quick announcements here, and I'm going to actually share my screen. One is I just want to encourage everyone to continue doing what you're doing in terms of trying to raise awareness around these issues. You know, you know, I hope you feel that you can, you know, that you can do things to help bring about change, whether it's at your school, whether it's at your state level or the federal level. There are a lot of opportunities. Recently, I mentioned that we created an advocacy toolkit, which is now on the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraints webpage. I encourage you to go find that. We also are here to help you in that mission. So if you're looking to do something to evoke a change, get in touch with us and let us work with you. I do want to mention a couple things here. One, if you enjoy the podcast and the shows that we do, we started a new program with Patreon, which allows people to subscribe. These events will always be free. I will always want them to be free and available, but it does take a lot of time and effort and energy to pull these together. So we actually have a membership plan now. If you're interested in helping support the shows that we do, it's always greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to mention that. But I do want to mention as well that we have in 2 weeks another show coming up. And I'm very excited about our next guest, as I always am. We've got Joe Broomer, who's going to be joining us. And Joe has actually written a book about building a trauma-informed restorative school. We're going to be doing an interview with Joe, and really excited about that. So make sure you join us. Make sure you join us again in 2 weeks. And beyond that, and I will just show you too, if you're interested, you might want to grab a copy of his book in the meantime. It's called Building a Trauma-Informed Restorative School. Lots of great information there. So I look forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks. Somebody had asked about direct messaging. Absolutely. If you want to message me through the Alliance page, I always encourage people to. You are welcome to shoot me an email, and I'm going to put my email address in the chat. It's actually Guy Stevens at nseclusion. And I'm saying it as I'm typing it, so hopefully I won't make a mistake. At nseclusion.org, and email is a really good way to get a hold of me as well. But you can also contact me through the Alliance social media. Thank you for everyone that was watching today, or maybe watching after the fact. Again, I think that all of us together can make a difference, and appreciate you being part of this journey. Until next time, take care.